On my son's wedding night, the bride slapped me in front of everyone and held out her hand for the keys to my house. Silverware froze mid-air. I swallowed the salt at the tip of my tongue and smiled like nothing had happened. I'm Marian Doyle, 58, a former hospital auditor. I live small in an old apartment, drive a 10-year-old sedan, and know how to bow to bills, but not to humiliation. I've learned to stand up straight, even when my hands tremble a little. The pain wasn't the slap. It was my son's eyes as he turned away, like I was outdated equipment bound for storage. One word, burden, can weigh more than a handprint. But this isn't a story about a weak mother. It's the path I took to keep my dignity, mine, and that of older folks being financially abused in the dark. I promise to tell this all the way through, so one person's fear can become many people's courage. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, share this story, and don't forget to leave a comment wherever you're listening. And then, the twist. They thought I was poor, fooled by my old sweater and packed lunches. They didn't know I'd quietly paid off debts for 3 years, fronted the wedding cash, and kept every receipt in a little pouch. They demanded keys, not realizing keys don't open a trust. I didn't scream. I called my lawyer. If you're ready, let's go back to that afternoon in the Vineyard. The MC had just called mother of the groom. The mic popped with a dry click. I stepped up, set a thick envelope on the wooden podium, and said just loud enough, "Invoices don't leave bruises, but the truth does." My daughter-in-law slapped me in the middle of the reception, then held out her hand for the keys to my house, called it a meaningful wedding gift. I said, "Meaningful to whom?" I'm Marian Doyle, 58. I used to audit a public hospital. Now I keep to an old apartment with a window over a parking lot and a worn-out maple. I like black coffee, plain sweaters, and well-mannered silence. That day, silence refused to be on my side. The Vineyard was the color of late afternoon gold, string lights hanging low like fallen stars, ripe grapes mixed with the buttercream scent of the cake. I stood by the dessert table, fingers wrapped around a rusty key ring. The teeth scraped each other, a tiny click-click, my hand's old habit when I need to steady myself. Sloane came over, white fitted dress, hair in a bun, without a single stray strand. Her eyes arched into a proud crescent. She leaned to my ear and whispered, sweet as burnt sugar, "Mom, the keys, now." I looked at her brand new heels. Then I met her eyes. I said slowly, "Honey, to open a door, you first need a house." Light as air, but I saw her mouth tighten. She tilted her head, a smile thin as a blade. "The house keys, Mom. Adam said you were ready to give them as a meaningful gift." I paused for a breath. Then I smiled. Meaningful to whom? A guest happened to turn. Phone wedged between 2 fingers, camera already rolling the way it does at every modern party. In that little screen, I saw myself. Navy dress, black clutch. I saw Sloane swing. The slap wasn't hard enough to break anything, but the sound cracked the air like a finger snapped against water. The crowd fizzed. Up. Whoa! Rolled under the vines. An old groom of the Vineyard looked over. A bridesmaid froze. A little boy gripped his plastic fork until his knuckles went white. I tasted metal, faint as a penny on the tongue. I didn't touch my cheek. I kept my hands where they were. The keys lay cold in my palm like the tiny spine of a fish. I said, just loud enough for myself to hear, "A meaningful gift, right? Then listen carefully to the meaning." Sloane's eyes widened. She turned, searching for Adam, but he was caught up in a knot of friends. The soundtrack shifted to a floaty ballad. I unzipped my clutch. One crisp little click. clear as a switch. Inside was a thick envelope, thick enough that its own edge could speak for me. A server hovered, asking if I needed water. I thanked him, sipped. The water was flat. My chest settled, even. I turned back to Sloane. She looked at me the way you look at a safe walking on two legs. I went on, lower than the music. I have a bag. In it are the years I paid for the two of you. I didn't say the number. Didn't need to yet. I just set two words on the table like a stone on cloth. Paid for. Someone whispered. What's happening? Another answered. Mother of the groom and the bride. Phones lifted higher. Reflections skipped along glossy cases like tiny insects. Sloane tried to step back, pulling air to her side. She dropped her voice. You're ruining my day. I said, your day isn't being ruined by me. It's being called by its name. She frowned, eyes pretty as pebbles. A very old sadness slid through my chest. Its name was Adam. On stage, the MC wore his professional smile. He held the mic like a scentless bouquet. He made a joke about love and grapevines. Scattered laughter. Then he checked the list. Brighter voice. And now a few words from the mother of the groom, Marion Doyle. My name floated through the vines like a bird without a nest. I looked at the envelope, ran a finger along its edge, rough as a page that's been turned too many times. It nicked me awake. I wondered why people assumed I was poor. Maybe the old sweater, maybe the mint I never add to drinks, maybe the way I wash my 10-year-old car myself. They don't know the habit inside those habits, keeping receipts flat, dating each one, and placing everything somewhere a key can't open. They demand keys while the real door is somewhere else. Sloane said, if you go up there, I'll never forgive you. I looked at her gently, the way you look at a weather report that's already wrong. Forgiveness isn't a clearance item you sell. I said it, and her smile dropped like a hair clip slipping from a bun. I turned to the cake table and saw the framed photo tilted on its stand. Adam and Sloane. Bright smiles, chins touching, eyes aimed the same direction. I set two fingers on the frame's edge, then drew them back. Some things don't need touching to be understood. The music jumped to a quicker beat, but somewhere between clinks and laughter, I heard a hollow space. It widened, like paint being peeled from a wall. I breathed. I lifted my bag. I tightened the keys in my left hand like an heirloom from an old life. The MC searched for me. Lights skimmed the vines. The Polaroids clipped on string. The faces of kin and strangers. Then it was my turn to move. Each step on the wood deck felt like stamping a tiny seal. I climbed the low riser. The mic waited. I could hear my own breath, steady, unhurried. I set the clutch on the podium. I held the envelope out, as if setting it on an invisible scale. The crowd quieted. A fork rolled off a table and tapped the floor twice. I thanked silence for returning to its rightful place. I gripped the flap and pulled, slow. Paper rasped on paper, a soft tear like a secret nearing its expiration date. And before any numbers left my mouth, I looked up. I looked straight at Sloane. I spelled it out, just loud enough. Meaningful to whom? The MC angled the mic toward me. Eyes followed like stubborn fireflies. I smiled, neither sweet nor sharp. I was ready. This is where the real story begins. Would you like to hear numbers that talk? I cleared my throat and kept my voice low, even. I live frugally. Old sweaters, a 10-year-old sedan. But for the last 3 years, I've wired Adam $200 a month. That's about $200. I paid $18,300 on his overdue car note. I put down a $12,000 deposit on the venue. I fronted $3,000 for the ring. Every line has a receipt and an email confirmation. The payer's name bright as noon. Mine. I didn't speak loudly, just clearly. Each figure was a pebble I'd picked up along the way, rinsed and tucked in my pocket. Not to throw, just to remember. I'm built for tidy paperwork, not noisy tears. I kept my life simple so my son wouldn't feel embarrassed by his mother. I carried a worn tote to the grocery, paid with my own debit card, avoided using the secondary card on his account. I thought that was love, me stepping back so the young could step forward. Then one day, I heard someone call me a burden on paper. The words hit bone, like wind slamming a loose window. Adam didn't say it, but he stood there and didn't correct it. I looked at my son and saw the old little boy trying to wear a hat 2 sizes too big. Maybe I'd steadied him so often he thought the ground was always going to be carpeted for him. I found an email Sloane sent a friend, not because I snooped, but because she misaddressed it while asking when certain documents would be ready. She wrote, "She's just holding the keys for me." Light as a butterfly wing. It hit my face like a porcelain plate. Holding the keys. I flipped the phrase in my head like turning a fish. Fine bones. Faint stink. People think keys open every door. They don't know some things don't open with metal. They open with time, with memory, with signatures long since dry. I don't get mad at random. I keep a ledger. I wrote down the date I sent the first transfer, right after Adam's bonus was cut. I noted the day I paid the car arrears, after his choked call about a boot on the wheel. I wrote the day I put down the venue deposit. Gotta lock the pretty date, they said, and the day I advanced the money for the ring, because, per Sloane, the jeweler's leaving the state. Each time I printed the confirmation email and clipped it to the receipt. I slid them into a thick envelope with a stiff edge, labeled it in blue ink. Not to brag, so when my memory tires, the paper can speak. I'm not listing this for pity. I'm setting a mirror on the table. Look if you want, or look away. I won't. Not anymore. Sloane once asked why I didn't dress nicer when I went out with them. I smiled and said I was comfortable this way. Half true. The other half, I wanted them to see that ordinary life isn't shameful, but to people addicted to photographs, ordinary is bad lighting. Old clothes and an old car made them think I had nothing. They didn't know I was paying for many of the things they were showing off. Someone asked why I didn't tell my son straight. I did, in my way. I texted punctuation and all. I've helped. Now it's time you stand on your own. He replied thanks, with a smiley face. A smooth, ageless little face. I'm not fond of scenes, but silence has limits. Slice it into whispers and it becomes a rip. I touched that rip the day I saw Sloane's email. She's just holding the keys for me. I smiled. I'm not holding them for her. I'm holding what's mine. After my husband died, I put the apartment into a trust. People call it tying up assets with a sensible bow. I call it tying a ribbon around fear. The trust is in my name, with a successor trustee if I'm ever infirm. All papers signed, filed. There isn't a door in there that needs the keys hanging on a hook. Inside the envelope I brought tonight, besides receipts and emails, there's a copy of that trust. The paper's edge feels like bark under my thumb. I thought of my husband's hand on the contract back then, trembling a little from painkillers. We agreed on one simple thing. A home is a safe place. No one gets to shove an old person out their own door. I slid that copy deeper into the envelope. No one needs to read it yet. I just need to know it's there, heavy and calm, like a stone under muddy water. On stage, the lights dipped and rose. Glasses chimed like rain on a tin roof. I looked at my hand. The keys were still there, rusty, old. They open exactly one lock. What I need to open tonight doesn't use metal. I lifted my head and saw Sloane at the edge of the dance floor, looking at me the way you look at a math problem with an answer key. I remembered her line, holding the keys. I tucked the key ring gently into my purse. She wants this, thinking it's a ticket. I want that, because I know it's the wall that's going to stand up for me. I breathed. My voice stayed low, steady. I accepted a different truth. Love isn't silence. Helping isn't letting people relabel you a burden. I closed the envelope. The paper shut, with the soft sound of a door meeting its jamb. Inside me, a switch flipped. From here on out, I won't pay by stepping back. I'll pay with straight lines and daylight. The wedding night was far from over, but the story had already turned a corner. Tomorrow morning, Sloane invited me to a cozy brunch. They said there were a few papers to look over. I'll go. I'll bring the envelope. And one more thing, a recorder already running in my bag. Want to know what's on the brunch menu? 2 weeks before the wedding, Sloane texted me an invitation to a family brunch. Soft in the invite, hard on arrival. Sun poured straight through the cafe windows. On the table sat a thick packet tied with thin string. Beside it, a woman in a dark blazer with a tiny name badge. She introduced herself as a mobile notary, the kind that brings the pen to you. On the packet's cover, a single plain line. Capacity evaluation. I touched the cardstock with my fingertip. It felt gritty, like pavement after rain. Sloane stood to give me a loose hug, a faint trail of perfume. Adam sat across from me, stirring coffee he never drank. The notary smiled politely. She said today was just a few papers to protect my safety because age comes with risk. I nodded, thanked her for the concern. In my purse, my phone was already recording, not loud, just enough to keep other people's words from slipping away. They opened the packet. The first page was a memory questionnaire. The next, a pledge to let family manage my finances if needed. Another was an authorization to have a doctor certify my cognitive state. Many boxes were pre-checked. Only the doctor's signature and dates were missing. I glanced down and saw my name in the right corner, neat as a label maker, spelled correctly, not a mark out of place. Sloane poured me water, a thin smile. She said I'd seemed forgetful lately. 3 times I supposedly left my keys in the door. I gently reminded her that one time I left them for the furnace repairman. She nodded as if that detail were unrelated. The notary added, "This is just a formality. No one gets hurt by formalities." I asked, even voice, concern for me or for the deed? The word deed dropped slowly, like a pebble in a well. Adam looked up. Sloane's expression didn't change. She leaned in, tone almost tender. "Mom, everybody wins when the assets go to the people who'll actually use them." The line padded across the tabletop like a cat that knows the route. I smiled. "The people who'll use them." I looked at Adam. He pinched a napkin until it balled into a soft marble. I sat back and told the notary I wasn't against guardrails, but I'd need to read each item carefully. I asked why boxes were already checked. She said it was the recommended template. I asked why the Guardian column suggested Adam and Sloane. She said family is always the first choice. I nodded. Family is where you set a suitcase down in your chest and forget to zip it. I turned page by page. A HIPAA release, a durable power of attorney for finances, a margin note urging signature today to keep wedding prep on track. At the bottom, a small line, sign in front of a witness. I asked if a doctor was here. Sloan said a doctor could be added later. I set a hand to my chest, feigning a slow breath. I said my heart's been racing this year. Must be the weather. Silence made a lap around the table. The server dropped pastries, asked if I needed more sugar. I shook my head. I asked if anything would be lost if I didn't sign today. Sloan set her fork down a touch too hard. She said nothing would be lost, but everything would get harder, and I'd been forgetful anyway. I looked at her honest. I thanked her for worrying about me. Then one last question. If I sign, who's holding the keys to my accounts? Adam made a small choke in his throat. Sloan answered, "We'll hold them for you, safe and sound." I nodded, as if listening to a dull, short story. I saw Adam's eyes skip away. He wouldn't meet mine. I knew that look from when he was little, hiding a toy car behind the sofa and thinking Mom would never see. The notary checked her watch and said she could guide me through the signatures, in order. I said I'd forgotten my readers. I needed to take the packet home to read slowly, so I wouldn't miss anything important. Sloan cut in. "Just sign now, and we'll get the doctor to confirm tomorrow." I smiled, my hand trembling slightly like someone afraid of dropping a teacup. I asked if I could take a copy, just to read. I'd return it right away. The notary waited, then said if I was truly going to review it, she could let me borrow a full set of copies. I tucked the stack to my chest. It felt as heavy as a sleeping cat. In my phone, the tiny red light still glowed. I said I had to go. HVAC filter appointment. Sloan stamped on a closing smile. "Go ahead, we'll handle the rest." I stood, nodded farewell. Adam lifted his cup, his lips moving around words he didn't quite say. Out the door, the sun met me like a warmed napkin. I walked along the trees, the soft thud of low heels on concrete. I opened my bag, stopped the recording. I slid out my envelope and slipped the copies inside. Paper met paper, sealing up like water smoothing over after a skipped stone. I dialed Priya Desai. 1 ring, 2. Then she picked up, bright, steady voice. I went straight. "They're angling for guardianship. They've got a notary, pre-checked capacity forms, only missing a doctor's signature." Priya asked what I had. I said, "A full recording, a full copy set, and a few lines clear enough to chill a room." I heard Priya's small laugh, the kind people make when they can see a path through fog. She asked if my trust was still active and whether Eunice Park was still the successor trustee. I said yes, intact. Priya told me, "Sign nothing, stay calm, keep the papers, and from now on, backstop every conversation with proof." I said I already have. "Good," she said. "Rest. I'll prep." I hung up and stood under the shade. Wind threaded my sweater like an invisible tailor. I looked at the packet in my hands. On the cover, "Capacity Evaluation," seemed to ask the question back at them. I slid it deep into my bag beside my own envelope. The two lay together, quiet as 2 bricks. I thought about one detail they don't know. My trust has a clear successor. My keys only open an old lock. The real door is somewhere else. I swung the bag onto my shoulder and stepped into the bright strip of sidewalk. In my head, a plan flicked on a light. And on the wedding day, I won't show up empty-handed. I'll bring the numbers. And one thing they haven't thought of yet. Give me one more chapter. We're about to pull the pin. The morning of the wedding began with one simple act. I sat at the little table by the window, opened my laptop and typed a clean subject line: request to revoke guarantee. I cited the clause in the venue contract about abusive conduct and risk of disruption. The amount, $47,000. I attached a plain summary of what happened at the family brunch. No embroidery, just timestamps and exact words. I hit send. The cursor slipped back to its place, calm as a lake at first light. 10 minutes later, my inbox pinged. Mr. Alvarez confirmed receipt, noted he was flagging a payment risk, and would initiate control procedures today. His prose was tight, no wasted syllables. I read it twice, then filed it in a dated folder. Paperwork knows its own route. I only opened the door. I called Priya Desai. She picked up on the second ring, voice steady, like someone who always stands in the middle of the room, neither too near nor too far. I pulled the guarantee this morning, I said. Good, she replied. I'll be in the office. If anything shifts, call me immediately. I could hear her turning pages on the other end. Priya always works to the small sound of a pencil underlining the right lines. Next was Coleman at the bank. I asked him to suspend spending on the secondary card tied to my account, the one Adam uses, pending a purpose review and risk control. He cleared his throat, verified 2 security questions. I answered cleanly. He confirmed the hold and said an email would follow. I thanked him and hung up. 3 old coffee cups sat stacked like a small tower on my table, relics of busy mornings. I chose the deep blue dress I'd worn at the lighting test, a simple hair clip, everything ordinary enough that no one would predict a storm. I carried a black clutch. Inside were the fat envelope, a copy of the trust, and a slim stack of confirmations. My phone was on silent, but recording sat 1 tap away. In the mirror, my face was unremarkable, except for a fine line between my brows, like a straight stitch. On the drive to the Vineyard, I cracked the window, let the morning air skim my fingers. The roadside trees seemed to whisper among themselves. I recited the clause again. If any abusive conduct or risk of instability threatens the safety of guests or staff, the venue may reevaluate the guarantee and demand immediate payment. I didn't need it on a sticky note. I knew it the way you know your own name. At the venue, staff were hanging the last wreaths. The air held ripe grapes and fresh wood stain. Mr. Alvarez came to greet me, eyes sweeping the grounds like a seasoned sentry. He said he'd flagged the items to be reviewed at settlement. His tone was even, but his hand gripped the clipboard a shade tighter. I nodded. No extra words. We shared a rule. Order arrives before applause. Sloane glided past, lifting her dress off the ground to show bright shoes. She smiled at the bridesmaids, tipping her head just so for the camera. When she saw me, she paused half a beat. Thin air stretched between 2 women. She said I was early, then offered a polite compliment about my dress. I returned one just as polite. Greetings at formal events are tablecloths, clean, straight, and hard to keep if someone yanks. I sat near a side exit, with a clear view of the stage and the cake table. As the prelude started, people joked about catching the golden hour shot. Adam came over, tie a little loose. You good, Mom? I'm good, I said. I looked at my son the way you look at a photo still in the developer. The image exists. The color hasn't appeared. He seemed to want to speak, then swallowed it. We touched hands, long enough to feel bone, short enough to go unnoticed. Coleman's email landed as I took my first sip of water. Secondary card temporarily suspended pending verification. I read it, locked my screen. The envelope in my clutch felt heavier, not from paper, but from a decision standing upright. I breathed slow, not from nerves, but because my rhythm needed to be different from the crowd's. Crowds love to laugh together, hold their breath together, and turn in unison at a slap. I don't. I needed my own quiet stretch of shore where words line up like small stones. No shoving, no hurry. Across the lawn, the band tested the mic. A small click, then silence. Mr. Alvarez passed again and handed me a written acknowledgement. Request to revoke guarantee received. Time-stamped. I folded it into the envelope. I know how my face looks at times like this. Not winning, not losing, just someone who has her coat in her arms and is ready for the door. A bridesmaid invited me to a quick family photo before the reception. I smiled and declined, said I had to call a neighbor about a heart pill. I called no one. I leaned against a post and closed my eyes for 5 seconds. 5 seconds is enough time for a person about to step on stage to repeat her purpose. Draw attention to put truth in its rightful place. Inspire enough that others see the exit. Lead with action, so no one mistakes my keys for their ticket. The MC's voice rose, a few light jokes about love and weather. The crowd laughed on cue. He glanced at his card, bright and formal. And now, a few words from the mother of the groom, Marion Doyle. I stood. My steps were neither quick nor slow. I felt eyes settle on my shoulders like fresh fallen leaves. I set my clutch on the wooden lectern, opened it, took out the envelope, pulled the mic closer. I scanned the courtyard. Sloane and Adam, Mr. Alvarez angled with his clipboard, a field of phones already raised. I have a few thank yous, I said, just loud enough. And a brief budget summary for this wedding. I let a half-beat pass so silence could slide into place. Would you like to hear numbers that speak? In front of 118 guests, I read slowly and clearly, the way you read the names of your own carved into stone. 100. 15,200 over 36 months of support. 18,300 to clear the delinquent car note. 12,000 to secure the venue. 3,000 toward the ring. A total of 148,500. A silver fork froze in midair, then fell and hit the plate with a dry ping, like a pebble dropped in a tin basin. I looked out at the crowd. Every face was a window just closed. I didn't have to raise my voice. The numbers lifted themselves. I turned the second page, the paper edge rasping the wood lip of the lectern. Payer name, purpose, dates, confirmation codes. They were all there. I said I wasn't reciting this to shame anyone. I was saying it so the numbers wouldn't stay buried under frosting. I was saying it so anyone tempted to call me a burden would know exactly where the snag is. Someone tittered from embarrassment. Someone else leaned to whisper, like speaking the truth might crack a wine glass. I heard the wind move through the trellis, leaves turning their pale side. At a table near the stage, an uncle propped his chin in his hand, eyes bigger than his lenses. All of it settled into a silence with weight. Mr. Alvarez stepped up one riser, not grabbing the mic, just asking for half a beat. He greeted the crowd, voice steady, like a man counting bottles in the cellar. He reminded everyone of the safety clause. If there's abusive conduct or a risk of disruption, the booking party's guarantee may be reevaluated and immediate payment required. He glanced my way, a small nod, then faced the couple. He announced that payment risk had been flagged and control procedures were now active. Chairs scooted softly, like a flock changing branches. Sloane's color shifted as if someone had yanked the shade off her face. She looked at me, eyes polished bright like a thin mirror. For a second I thought she'd say something decent, if only to protect the picture. She didn't. She charged, hand arriving before her words. The slap wasn't hard, but it was crisp, like stamping in the wrong box. thin hiss spread outward. I stood still, palm on the envelope. My cheek heated and then cooled, the surface of a pond after a stone. I didn't answer. I slid the itemized sheet into her hand, as lightly as you hand over a parking stub. "Invoices don't leave bruises," I said, just loud enough. And as I heard it, something slipped off my shoulders. Not anger. Weight. Adam got 2 steps toward me before his friends held his arm, the way you steady a drunk who doesn't know what he's drunk on. His mouth opened, but the words lay behind his tongue and no one could lift them out. I looked at my son, and suddenly the space between us felt as wide as the Vineyard lawn, a shape made by all the times I transferred money without annotating feeling. Mr. Alvarez signaled security. 2 staffers in dark jackets walked over. Unhurried, untheatrical, they placed a polite length of air between me and Sloane. One of them, in a voice he'd practiced in the mirror, invited the bride and groom to the manager's office to settle the outstanding balance immediately. Settle the balance pricked the bubble like a small needle. Heads turned, the way they do when the wind shifts. I lowered the mic half a hand's width and let silence do its job. Silence works in its own trade. It lays over tabletops, slides into sleeves, rests on the lip of a glass, and sinks into the pores of wood. I heard wind breathe at the door seam. I heard my heart slow. I heard the words inside the envelope stand up and line up behind me like a row of gray-suited witnesses. One bridesmaid blinked at me. I smiled at her, the smile of someone who knows things have to happen in order. I turned to the guests and bowed my head in place of an apology for changing the color of the party. No one clapped, and I knew that was another kind of courtesy. People clap for music. Today, the music had gone dim. An aunt whispered that money talk doesn't belong in a place like this. I nodded. I used to think so too, but every house has a roof. When the roof leaks, you point at the ceiling, not because you like pointing, but because water is falling on the table. "I only want to keep the roof dry," I said. I picked up the venue's acknowledgement Mr. Alvarez had handed me, folded it neat, and slid it into the envelope. Everything has its place. I snapped my clutch shut, a small click like a latch. I went back to my seat, set the bag on my lap, and folded my hands. I didn't need to watch the group head for the office. I'd already watched my part through. In the corner, the band fussed with strings. A sour note popped and died. Phones drifted down to tabletops like a tired flock. I drew a long breath and let the smells of grape, wood, and buttercream cross in my chest. I thought about tomorrow night, when everyone's asleep and this becomes a short video online. They'll argue about a mother reading a ledger at a wedding. They'll pick sides. Me, I only pick a truth that stands upright. One of the security staff returned and politely said I could step off the stage. I nodded, thanked him. The step felt a hair lower on the way down. Maybe it was the shoes. Maybe I was just lighter. I sat back straight, eyes not searching for anything. What needed saying had been said. The rest belonged to the party responsible for payment. Still, I knew the storm wouldn't end in a Vineyard office. People afraid of losing the key will look for another door to knock on. They'd prepped their paperwork. They'd rehearsed their story. I touched the edge of my envelope the way you touch a kitchen knife that's always clean. I had my witnesses, on paper, on tape, and one more thing they didn't know about. In 3 days, in a different room under colder lights, we'll meet again. Want to hear the gavel open the session? 3 days after the wedding, the mail carrier knocked. A yellow envelope, the corner embossed with the county court's name. I slit the edge and ran a finger down the cold type. Petition for guardianship. Reason: mother lacks financial capacity and is easily deceived. I stood still and listened to my heartbeat change, like someone had just turned the radio way down. I set the packet on the kitchen table and called Priya Desai. She arrived within half an hour, dark coat, steady eyes. She paged through, penciled a few underlines, then tilted her mouth, not quite a smile. "We have recordings and emails. What do they have?" I poured tea. The steam crossed my face like a reminder that I was here, fully lucid. Priya spoke slowly, counting steps. "We respond immediately, and we activate the successor clause in your trust. If there's a dispute, Eunice Park co-manages assets with me until the court sorts it out." I nodded. Eunice is the neighbor who grows chrysanthemums and brings me soup on snow days. She came as soon as I called. The three of us sat in a quiet triangle around the kitchen table. Priya read the clause. Eunice set her hand on the page's edge. "I'm here," she said. 3 words, and suddenly the room had a roof. Priya rang Coleman at the bank. His voice came clean over speaker. "Adam's secondary card has been locked since the wedding. I'll send formal confirmation today with the transaction history stopping at that time." Priya added, "Attach an alert, blocking any new cards tied to Marion's Social Security." "Understood," he said. By noon, I changed the locks. The drill chattered like a clock running fast. The locksmith pulled the old bolt, set the new, tested it again and again. I chose a lock with no chime, just truth. I taped notes to myself to change pins, reset passwords, and turn on 2-factor for bank email and utilities. Each task done, I drew a line through it in my notebook. My handwriting isn't pretty, but it stands in straight rows. I'd never been this tired, and never stood this straight. They call me easily deceived, because I don't shout, I thought. But silence isn't stupidity. Silence is the habit of a record keeper. Priya built a stack of paper witnesses. The brunch recording, screenshots of the key demand email, the guarantee withdrawal confirmation, Mr. Alvarez's incident memo. She added Eunice's declaration about the trust and the successor clause. She tapped the cover and nodded. "Preliminary hearing likely this week. We'll move to dismiss." In the afternoon, Adam texted, "Mom, I'm just worried about you." I read it and faced down the phone. I saw his Vineyard face again, hands wanting to reach, not knowing what to hold. I replied, "I'm fine. You should talk to the person who needs talking to." Period. No smiley. Eunice moved into the spare room. We made soup and left the kitchen light on late. No wedding talk. Just the fence that needs paint and the picture frame that's been crooked forever. Some stories belong on the shelf until the court turns on the lights. Next morning, Priya sent our draft response. I read every line. No saber rattling, just dates, amounts, names, exhibits. Ms. Doyle has full financial capacity, supporting evidence attached. I signed. The pen drew a single steady stroke. Near noon, the phone rang. Priya, voice a shade lower, which means important. "Coleman just flagged something. A store card application using your social." I sat, the tabletop cold under my palm. "Filed when?" "The night after the brunch," she said, "and the IP log points to Sloane's apartment." I pulled out a chair and sat properly. "They applied in my name to prove I'm incompetent?" Priya let out a thin laugh, sharp as a blade. "If that's the plan, they forgot e-signatures leave footprints. We'll take it to court. IP logs, timestamps, the store's KYC requests, and the bank's fraud alert. It all strings together like beads." I felt lighter, not because we'd won, but because the air finally had the right name. I cracked the window. Rain fell in straight lines, no drift. I thought of Sloane's email. She's just holding the keys for me. If this door opens by signature, where exactly will their key fit? Eunice came in with tea. News? She asked. I gave her the short version. She frowned. So they prove you're easy to con by using your number to con. I nodded. They might call it strategy. Eunice set the cup down. I call it a confession. By late afternoon, Priya emailed the notice. Preliminary hearing Thursday morning, Courtroom 3, Judge Morales. I circled it in red. The color lit the page like backlight. I looked at the new keys on the hook. They chimed faintly, like rain along a row of eaves. I packed my bag for tomorrow. Trust copies, bank letters, mahos, the recording, screenshots, and their petition. Folded once. Everything into a big envelope, slipped inside a canvas tote. I added a roll of mints. Not for me. For anyone who might need a taste less bitter. Night fell. The apartment went quiet except for the clock stepping along. I thought of Adam, pictured him on the edge of a bed, hands hanging. Maybe he hasn't yet realized where he's standing. As for me, I've chosen the middle of the room, the place the light reaches first. I shut the lights. Darkness laid over the kitchen like a clean black cloth. I spoke softly to the wall. Tomorrow, I don't need anyone to believe me. I need the paperwork to be heard. And if you want to know what the court hears first, come with me. In the morning. In there, the gavel isn't loud, but it knows exactly where to land. That morning, Courtroom 3 was cold as stone. White light fell straight onto the wood, no room for shadows. I sat in the front row, one hand on my bag. Priya beside me, back straight, eyes steady. Eunice behind me, her palm on my shoulder for a second, then gone. The other side stood first. Their lawyer called me paranoid, said I was confused about money, easily influenced. The bride dipped her head. The groom looked away. Paper rustled like steady rain. Priya didn't argue feelings. She opened the file and slid out 3 pieces of evidence. The brunch recording, the email demanding the keys, the store card, application log, with timestamp and IP address. She laid them out neat as flatware before dinner. The clerk hit play. The sound came out dry and true. Sloane's voice, polite, then hard. Mom, everyone wins when the assets go to the people who actually use them. A thin slice of silence, then my voice. Worried about me or about the deed? Next, the email, black letters on white, asking for my keys, not poetry, no exclamation points, just a still line of text. Priya handed up the browser log. Date, time, store, application type, network trail. I didn't read all of it. I read faces. Judge Morales tilted his head and looked over his glasses. He told the clerk to stop the audio. The room went cellar quiet, cool and heavy. Opposing counsel cleared his throat. She misunderstands the technology. IPs can be wrong. They were just helping Mom get organized. His voice slid around like cold grease. Priya answered in one clean sentence. While they were organizing, Adam's secondary card was still in use until the guarantee was withdrawn. The bank has locked it. Here's the confirmation. Paper up, stamped, back down. Truth's work is like that. Judge Morales braced a hand on the bench. He looked at me, then at Adam and Sloane. He spoke slowly, like reading the names of floorboards. This courtroom isn't a stage. I look at documents and conduct. He read the decision. Petition for guardianship denied. Insufficient grounds. The proposed ward shows clear financial capacity. He paused. Additionally, there are indicators of elder financial abuse. The file will be referred to the appropriate authorities. No theatrics. Just 2 final sentences that changed the room's temperature. Adam bowed his head, hands knotted like a rope. Sloane stared up at the ceiling, eyes glazed as if waiting for the uplights to come on. I exhaled, slow, not relief, a return to my regular rhythm. I heard the clerk's pen scratch. The minute order said it plain. Petition denied. File referred. Set a review date. Priya leaned in and whispered, "We're done with this part." I nodded. Eunice slipped me a mint. I held it like a period at the end of a sentence. Out in the hall, the light was softer, disinfectant mixed with stale coffee. I had just tucked the papers away when I heard my son's steps. Adam stopped near me, not daring to touch. His lips were dry. "I knew a piece of it," he said. "I thought Sloane was just speeding up paperwork. I looked at him. I could see old seasons folded inside his eyes. I spoke slowly so the words wouldn't skid. "Son, speeding things up and pushing your mother out are different." The line hit the tile and stayed put. He nodded, face gone pale. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't think through the fallout." I didn't touch the apology. I took a business card from my bag, not a lawyer's. A therapist near the stone church, good with short sentences and the right silences. I set it in his palm. "Call," I said. "Not to save me, to save you." He gripped it like a float. "Will you still talk to me?" In the glass door, I saw our reflections merge and separate. "I will," I said, "but I won't do your work for you." Sloane clicked past, heels ticking. She didn't look at us. She was busy checking her face in the front camera. A draft curled the loose paper on the floor. The judge's name was on it. The ink hadn't dried. Priya handed me a thin packet. "Keep this," she said. "It's the minute order. Light paper, heavy weight, not money heavy, brick in a wall heavy." Eunice arrived with 2 bagels from the lobby cafe. "Eat," she smiled. "Sugar keeps the shakes down." I took a bite. The small sweetness cut the bitter. I looked at my son. He was standing a touch straighter. The card sat in his shirt pocket. I asked him to text before coming by the house. He nodded, eyes red, and walked away slowly, like someone learning to step on new ground. Priya steered me toward the door. "The referral investigation will take time," she said. "We don't chase. Your job is to live your plan. I'll track the rest." I gave a thin smile. Living the plan is what I do best. Outside, the sun spilled across the courthouse steps like someone had thrown salt. I stood there a minute and let the warmth reach bone. Behind me, the glass door closed on Sloane with a sound that felt exactly like her shutting one part of her life, though she didn't know it. We went down the stairs. Eunice took my arm. A sparrow perched on the railing, head up. I opened my bag and set the papers in order. Trust, recording, email, network log, minute order, each in its proper sleeve. I snapped the clasp. Clean. Final. I knew this wasn't an ending. A courtroom is just a room. Home is the long question. I turned to Priya. "I'm changing one thing tonight. I'm going to hang my keys somewhere else." She nodded. "Know why?" "Do it," she said. "Sometimes moving the hook changes how you breathe." We parted on the steps. I walked toward the parking lot, even pace. My phone buzzed once, then twice. I didn't answer yet. A voice was waiting on the other end with a story still wet around the edges. But before I picked up, I wanted to do one small thing at home. Move the keys. And if you want to know what that voice said when I finally pressed accept, "Meet me in the next chapter." There, a door opens on the softest sound, and the whole house changes air. I changed the locks, changed the numbers, even changed small habits, like how much sugar goes in my coffee. Every morning I brew it strong and hang the new key ring on the wooden hook, like polishing and rehanging an old medal. Sunlight hits each tooth and throws a gentle metallic glow. When the keys touch, the faint clink sounds like a door confirming it will hold. I swapped checking texts before breakfast for opening my notebook. Line 1 is always something I'll do for myself. Line 2 is for others, but only within limits. I'm learning to say enough and stop on time. My voice is lower, steadier when I read the list out loud, like reciting plant names in a garden so I'll remember them. Eunice turned the spare room into a work corner. Priya arrived, opened a thick canvas tote, and spread the first folders for the Elder Dignity Fund across my kitchen table. No glowing logo, no fussy slogan, just 3 aligned signatures and one aim: help older adults stop being herded into the dark corners of paperwork. By noon, we'd called 2 places that offer small legal assistance grants. No grand promises, just a promise to reply fast if it's urgent. That's enough. The fund launched with a tidy account, a shared email, and a blue file binder. I labeled the spine carefully, like writing the name of a newborn. By afternoon, I was standing in the living room looking around. The blank wall on the right would fit a few fraud prevention posters. Eunice measured the nail spacing, murmuring like she was reading music. Priya laughed that we were building a kitchen that could cook justice. Odd line, warm feeling. My apartment felt half again as big. That night we recorded the pilot for Silent Truths. No studio, no acoustic panels. Just a closet door ajar and a few quilts hung like thick curtains. I set an old mic on a stack of books, leaned in and read short, unstitched lines. My voice trembled for 2 minutes, then settled. Eunice kept time. Priya line edited, stopping me to swap a word where it could be cleaner. We set up the channel. No theme music, just a breath. Then hello. I retold what I'd said in front of the crowd, but this time there were no silver forks freezing mid-air, only the small space between me and the mic. I ended with a test line, then silence. We listened back and gathered the stray noises like pins fallen from a tin. By morning, the first episode was live. The first few dozen listens felt like gold. An email hit the fund's inbox. The writer's grandmother had nearly signed a blank power of attorney. We replied immediately with 3 steps: call a lawyer, freeze transactions, steady the mind. The thank you that came back was one warm line. I printed it and filed it in the blue binder. Adam texted me his weekly therapy schedule. I wrote back, good. I didn't ask for details or add advice. Some roads the young have to read by their own signs. The messages grew fewer, but clearer. I learned to see hope in a single word with a period in the right place. His marriage cracked like damp plaster after a storm. I didn't touch it. You can't smooth someone else's fracture with your own hand. I hung the keys, brewed the coffee, opened a fresh draft on spotting unusual, please sign this requests. Small things repeated, like a heartbeat, quiet but steady. Weeks passed. 2 quiet donations arrived, one signed simply, a son, the other a young mother. I thanked them in my head and labeled the binder. Priya joked that we had soup for 3 cold days. Eunice added, enough to buy someone a new lock. I practiced crisp closing lines, each one like a nail set true. That evening we recorded the first episode of the main series. The mic sat 2 finger widths from my mouth. My heartbeat matched the second hand. Then I spoke. I spoke about people who call control care and theft a strategy, about eyes that slide sideways when an older person asks about their own account. I didn't scold much. I said just enough for someone else to start asking their own questions. When I finished, the room was still. The quilts didn't stir. I closed the script, laid my hand on the key ring and read the final line, slow and clear, like a stamp. Justice isn't loud, it just stands upright. I hit stop. For a second I could hear my house breathe. The fridge hummed. A draft slipped through the window seam, carrying the smell of rain from far off. I looked at the blue binders on the table like a fleet of paper boats about to take the river. The phone rang, once, then twice. Unknown number. I answered. On the other end, a woman's voice was hoarse and shaking, like someone who'd just sprinted past a fear. "I'm sorry it's late," she said. "My daughter just had me sign a stack of papers. Said it was to make the bank easier, and also, I didn't have time to read. Please, can you listen?" I looked at the keys on the hook. The last light of the day touched the teeth and flashed like an answer. "Yes," I said. "Tell me." And if you want to hear how that call began, stay with me one more night. Some doors only open to a voice at the right time. And tonight we have the keys. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Every click helps us bring more powerful stories of empathy, justice, and silent strength to life. Your support is what fuels this journey. Let's keep standing together and rising higher one story at a time. Stay safe and inspired.